nice. So, hi, I want to welcome everyone. I'm Kathy Bloomfield, and I'm the president of AJL. And I want to say good morning and good afternoon and good evening, depending on where you are. I know I just had my breakfast and somebody's eating their dinner right now. So I welcome you wherever you are from. And if you wouldn't mind taking a minute to just put your name in the chat and tell us where you are at the moment located. Thank you. AJL has had a goal to map the institutions that have Jewish collections to promote their visibility and their accessibility to the materials in their collection. This has been a goal that we've had for over a year, probably longer. And we have a directory committee that has been working hard to collect all this data. So they've collected the initial data, and now we thought we would have the next phase of this project be the opportunity for people to talk to one another and maybe crowdsource our database a little bit. So it's my very great pleasure to introduce you to Neil Frau-Cortis, who is heading the directory committee, and to Jan Reichart, who is our intern on this project. And I'm going to turn the meeting over to Neil, who's going to explain to you what we're going to do today and the process. So thank you all for joining us. It's wonderful to see every single one of you. And Neil, it's all yours.
Thank you so much, Kathleen, and thank you all for showing up. This is a big crowd, which makes me extremely happy. We're very glad to be here to introduce you to what we've done so far and what is yet to do. I want to emphasize that this is certainly a teamwork. There is our committee that kind of supervises and organizes this, but the directory is from every one of you, those who contributed to the database and those who are yet to contribute and that will use it. So this is what I was planning for this meeting today. I'm going to introduce our wonderful intern, Yam, in a little bit. And she will present you two different models we came up as examples. So those are not operative models yet. You can see how they work, but they are not populated with all the data. So don't go to them and say, oh, but I gave my indications for my library is not there. It's fine. It's only a selection for show, for you to see. Then we will open for a little bit of questions from you, and also we are really interested in your feedback, your reactions. Of course, we have a favorite model, and we'll try to explain, or Jan will try to explain why. But I mean, of course, we are here to listen to you. And then at that point, the rest of the hour is up to us to play with the data. How are we going to do this? I'm going to post a link so that you can see all the data that is already there, and another link to a form that if you say, oh, my library is not here, or whatever library is not there, you can fill that form and it will come to us. Sounds good? Okay, so here it is. Let me introduce you to Jan. Jan Reichart is a first-year MLIS student at the University of Alabama, focusing on academic libraries and digital stewardship. She received her first master's in American Studies from the University of Alabama and her bachelor's degree in American Studies on Women and Gender Studies from the Tel Aviv University. She is a native of Los Angeles, and while she has not gotten quite used to the humidity of the American South yet, she loves the forest, the cicadas, and the barbecue. Yam lives with her fiance, Adam, and their pet snake, Eve, who enjoys sitting on Yam's desk while she works. So I'm passing this to Yan.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much again for coming and for participating in this. As folks have mentioned, I am an intern and a first-year MLAS student, so I'm especially excited to be part of this project so that I can learn more about, like, it's very hands-on, like library type work. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the two prototypes that I've built. And before I show them to you, I do want to mention two things about them. First, they both are easily embeddable. So whenever this directory goes live, the way that I at least envision is there's probably going to be some like link on AJL's website, and you just click on it and you'll be able to go to the map. So it should be really seamless and easy. And both of these prototypes are visually accessible. So they're readable by screen readers. And I'm doing my best to make sure that the color schemes and any type of visual indications are it won't be hard for people who are like colorblind or anything like that to use them. So that's something that I'm always keeping in mind. So I'm going to share my screen, and we're going to start with the first one. It's called a program called StoryMap, which is an open source platform that lets you create a story by using a map. Okay. This and this. Okay, so this is this is what it's going to look like when people click through. So first you get this nice introduction where you can click if you don't see your library or your collection on this map. You'll be able to click here and fill out the survey. There's also an email. This is an email address that I created that in case people have questions or anything like that, they can email me through this email and I'll answer questions or anything like that. And then the way StoryMap works is you click on Start Exploring and it takes you from point to point on the map. So one of the, well, before I get into the problems with that, and then let's talk about the content really quick. So here, for example, the Hebrew Academy of Nassau County, there's a general description. And this is all information that was pulled from the survey. All I did, I mostly copy pasted from the Excel sheet. So it's really just whoever filled out the survey, this is the information they provided us with. And here, so let me move this. Okay. So you have all this information, reading information, archival, cataloging format if they have it, blah, blah, blah. And then there's also contact information. And also here, you can see at the very bottom, there's also, it was really important to me to put a date for when this was last updated to make sure that future records can be, to create a certain accountability to make sure that this is constantly being updated. Now, sorry, this is, okay. Now the problem with this is like if you keep going, it keeps taking you to all these different places and you can always go back to the beginning. And if you click on map overview, this is the map overview, but it's not very comfortable to navigate from like place to place. Like if you zoom in, right? But then you're like, oh wait, but now I want to see another place. You have to we have to go to the map overview and click again. So that's kind of a problem, even though I think visually this is really, really pretty. And I like how big it is and it feels very friendly, for lack of a better word. But I think that's something to keep in mind is we want this to not just be visually accessible and potentially good looking, it also needs to be usable. So that's something to keep in mind. The other platform that I have is actually using Google Maps. So, which I think one is really convenient because I think most folks have probably used Google Maps at some point, and because it's Google, um, uh, it's really convenient to use, I think, for most people, even if they're not very familiar with it. So what I did was here on the left side, there's like this little intro that is not very convenient to use. So I created here a Start Here button, which if you click on it, and this is like in the center of the country, right? Like this is not one of the collections. Um, there's a similar introduction to what was on Story Map, including a link to the survey and the email address. But then also there's, if you notice, if we go back here, there's different collections are both color coded and they use different symbols, which again is in an effort to make this as visually accessible as possible. So for example, if we click on the Leo Baeck Institute, so here we have this is the same information as we saw in Story Map, but it's just presented differently. So again, this is all information that was taken from the survey, and down below we have contact information and, oh, there we go, great. And then including a date for that level of accountability. And then it's also, I think, theoretically, it'd be easy to, you zoom back out and then you can click on different points and it's not too complicated to navigate. And then if you're ever confused about something, you could always go back to the Start Here if you see a mistake or you want to add something, or you can't find your collection here once this goes live. So you can fill out the survey or send an email. Let me see. Yeah, and I think that's it for me. So I'd really love to hear thoughts and ideas. Actually, let me stop sharing really quick. There we go. So any feedback you have about a format you think that maybe we should try to look into Story Map, even though we're kind of leaning towards Google Maps a little more, or if you have any concerns about content or visual accessibility or anything at all, I'd love to hear it, either on the mic or in the chat, whatever's convenient for folks.
I wanted to ask Yam also if she thought about what do the different icons and colors stand for, or how can they be used eventually?
Well, for Google Map, I kind of tried to pick them randomly. Let me share the screen one more time and just show you, because I can't just pick anything that I want. Let me go back to the edit screen. So for example, here, if I want to change it, so I have these symbols right here, if you can see where my cursor is. So I have colors, fine, which again, I tried to just pick random ones, but these icons are just whatever Google gives me. There is a library, so I can add more. So, but I was kind of hoping to maybe use like I don't want to necessarily use a symbol like a menorah or a Star of David or something like that, because I feel like that can get really complicated and weird. So I was hoping for more neutral icons. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, totally. I can see how this can work. For instance, I don't know, if you put all the archives in one color and all the synagogue libraries in another, or
Yeah, thinking about the breakdown, research, archives, special libraries, schools, synagogue, center,
Right.
public libraries, that would be probably the divisions that we would think about it. And,
Awesome.
good question. So I just dropped the link into the chat if you haven't filled out the form yet. And Yadida asks, how does she know whether she did or not? Is there a way to see what's in there already?
Yes, in a minute I'm going to post a link to a visualization of the spreadsheet with the existing data so that people can, right after the questions, I'll repost this link and the other one.
Okay, thanks. And Julie
Um,
Kona has her hand raised.
Go ahead, Julie.
Sorry about that. My bottom bar disappeared from the screen for a minute. And now we were talking about icons, and I was thinking also maybe size of library. Oh, and Jan, this is really exciting, and I'm so impressed with your work, especially as a first year MLS student. It's really great, and Neil, wonderful project, and thank you for doing this. So forgive me if this is something that I should know and don't, but is the MAP project also tied to a database where you can search by school libraries, or you can search by geographic location or something like that, and get a list view as well as the map?
So that's something that we're also working on. That was actually one of the first things that I thought of also when I started this project, because I thought like a map is convenient, but also there should be another way to search through things. So that is currently in the works, and hopefully the goal is to present this like a mostly done live version of this by the conference, the annual conference. So hopefully by then we'll also have some sort of, at least a prototype, if not a like searchable list view of all this information.
And I'm just going to add, I'll share just for a minute. If you're a member, the member directory, of course, is behind the member login. You can get to it on the left. So if you're looking for particular libraries, you can break it down by group, by division. So if you're looking either in the more academic side or the more public facing side, you can choose, you can limit it to division, and you can do certain kinds of searches. As some of you know, we are, but that's behind the member wall, and it's not as easy to look at like this geographic map, which will be public facing and open. So of course, we're also working on our updated website, which will have a much easier to navigate member directory. But those are connected and yet separate things, because one is for members to get to be able to find each other, and one is for outside people. So we recently had somebody who was interested in finding like a local synagogue library with Judaica content, and he's not a member, he's just a parent of Jewish children who was looking for a place to find Jewish books for his kids. And so that kind of, we want to have the map as something that will be useful to an outside person who's trying to find materials as well. So there's sort of two uses for both of these things.
That's exactly it. And also think of the potential for the association of the fact that this is actually visible. Because if I am some small library that thinks, so who is going, I mean, I am not, my library is not big enough to join in. Well, you can see that there are so many other libraries. And the opposite is like, okay, I don't know, big university in England. Why should I show up in this small directory where there are major players also involved? So the fact that it's open to the public is also very good for people to grasp the reaches and the activities of the association.
Yeah, I'm going to ask a question. This is just a kind of a technical. So you started with story maps. So I know it's the first one, or Google Maps was the first one?
A story map was the first one.
What made you choose story maps for? Because I see story maps as a different thing, and more of using a map to tell a story, and using it more as a way of as a directory type map service. In terms of this, what made you choose that source? And that's one question I had. I had one other question.
Okay, when I started the internship, I actually spoke to, I know someone in the digital humanities lab at the University of Alabama, so I got in touch with her, and I was like, so do you have any affordable programs, websites, anything that also doesn't require coding? Because I don't know coding, because again, I'm very like deep in the humanities, and that's not something I do yet, at least. So she started out by saying StoryMap is really great. It's really visually pretty and it's accessible. And then she said, or Google Maps, she recommended.
Okay, that makes sense. The other thing I had is when you clicked on one of the libraries, they gave you the whole like story about the library behind it. And then is there a way of, let's say, when you click on a library, have the link right away up? That becomes like your first point, as opposed to kind of scrolling down all the way, just moving that up one.
To put the contact information at the top?
Yeah, I think this way you don't have to, I think that's in terms of easy contact. I mean, that's my own thing. I mean, I could be wrong, but in terms of, that's like one of the first things I look for right away, because everything else is nice to have. It tells you all about the library, maybe even content, or maybe even a link to the OPAC, which is a great thing to have too. But I think if you have that up front, it's an easier access point to get to the library itself.
Point taken. Will do. That's actually a great thing. Thank you.
Yeah, and I wanted to complete the answer saying also that we considered a number of different platforms, and the budget is a major consideration, because the budget one and the easy to use. Yama has been really nice and generous with her time, and we hope she will continue helping us. But I mean, we need to think what happens if Yam is not around. I mean, can somebody take it that doesn't need to know GIS and whatever the thing? Some prices that we have looked where the visualizations were awesome, but they were outrageous. And yeah, it's what you have.
Perhaps I should also mention that we are in the process of looking at additional ways to highlight our member libraries. And so this is the beginning, but hopefully we're hoping to build this out in more and more exciting ways, pending things like funding. But we're actively committed to doing this. So this is a start, but we hope to announce, that there'll be much more coming, within the coming months and years.
Yeah, I liked that you added the date feature so that we know when the data has been entered. That's very helpful. And then that could also function as a point of, at some periodically sending out a reminder to people, I don't know, every 1 year or 2 years, here's your information. Do you want to update it or not? So that in case they have new material or new links to add.
Right, that's what I was thinking. I mean, we have to kind of figure out how to do this, but one thought that Neil and I had was maybe to do a sort of, before this website or this directory goes officially live, check in with all the collections and libraries that are here and be like, hey, we're going live. Please make sure that all the information is correct and that you're not sharing information publicly that your institution does not want it to be public information, but also especially because Gmail is so easy. I think setting up just regular yearly reminders to go out to different institutions just to check in for an update. That's absolutely possible to even schedule ahead of time, so it doesn't take too much effort.
I'm from representing a very small synagogue library. I mean, a small library in a big synagogue, but I'm wondering how that works. So somebody sees us, they're able to look in our OPAC, they see a book or something they want, then what happens after that?
Well, I think it depends on why they're looking. For example, maybe it's maybe they're an MLIS student looking for an internship opportunity, and they see that actually your synagogue is located near where they live, and you wrote in the survey that you would like an intern to help you with your collection management or with weeding, and then that person can contact you and be like, hey, I'm the person that could help you do this.
Okay.
Or maybe it's somebody who's researching certain synagogues, or somebody who is looking for certain manuscripts, or maybe it's another synagogue in another part of the country, or maybe hopefully one day maybe even the world, who's like, oh, like maybe we can collaborate on a project. So it really depends on who is searching. Does that help?
Yeah, and would there be expense involved? That will be something else my committee would want to know.
No, it's all free.
Yeah. And part of it is, I mean, again, this is both internal and external. We want to be able to support you. And so when we know that, these are your needs, we know that we have this many small synagogue libraries who have volunteer librarians. It might mean that we can start a roundtable or start a group of small synagogue libraries, that want to interact with each other. So for us, getting this information from the association's perspective is really valuable as far as how we can then serve you guys better. But again, the example I gave before was somebody who just lived in a particular area and wanted to know where he could find Jewish books for his kids. And, your synagogue library might have them, and it could be somebody who lives, 4 blocks away, but doesn't realize that your synagogue actually has a library, which is too often the case, because not all synagogues do.
Which
So
is
there's so
actually
many
what
different-
happened. Which is actually what happened.
That's
that he
literally
called the
what
synagogue
happened.
and found out the book he was looking for was there
Yeah.
in their library. So
Is there a way of bringing that out? In other words, so you have this database, you have this map, right? Where you have all the institutions. Let's say we have 100 institutions that are all plugged in, and it's all mapped out. But now bringing out kind of the purpose behind it. In other words, some form, I don't know, I'm trying to find the right way of wording it out, but exactly what's being mentioned. If you're looking for an internship or if you're looking for a book, try here. If you're living, in other words, instead of having just that, it's like almost like an introduction to the purpose of the map.
I'm not even sure that's necessary, just because we get these kinds of queries all the time.
Right.
And so now we can just give them the link to the answer.
Right. But I think in the beginning, though, we probably draw away from that, but then it'll become more self-sufficient. Because instead of always having to, I hear your point. Yeah, that's what I mean. We do get, Hassel Front always has it. Where can I find this book? Oh, here's a library right next to you, and so on.
And I'm also thinking that since this will be embedded and integrated in the website, you can put some extra information. It's like, okay, if you want to know more about the purpose, go to this subpage. Boom, and you go there. Yeah.
Judy is asking Neil, how long does it take for the data to be uploaded? She has filled out the form last week, but doesn't see her library yet.
Yeah, let me, I explained it at
I just looked. Did you look on this spreadsheet, Judy, that Neil of the results?
Yeah, I
oh,
looked
yeah.
on the spreadsheet.
So I see
yes.
I see you on line 10 of that spreadsheet.
Okay, I must have missed it. Sorry.
No problem. It's a Google form, so it should populate immediately.
Yeah.
But I'm glad you raised that just to double check.
Although the view that you see right now is not fed by the Google form. It's just a copy so that if something happens with it, nothing, you cannot break anything.
You shared?
Yeah, got it. Thanks.
Yeah, yes. What I mean is that that's a frozen copy from a couple of days ago, so that people don't change it or something by some permission accident. But yeah, whatever you send on the form, I just posted the link again, gets immediately populated into the spreadsheet without our intervention. We may normalize it or whatever later, but not. As for the visualization itself, as I said at the beginning, don't freak out if you don't find your library there. It's just like 5 or 6 random libraries for us to show, but it's not yet full data out there.
So there's a question from Yadida. Is there a way I could have the ability to edit the entries? So when she's entered the form itself, can you go back and re-edit, or you have to re-input the information?
And we are going to send an email address.
Mhm.
If you have a correction or something, and the easiest is you email to this particular address that is for this purpose mostly.
Okay.
Let me post it right away. Oh, there it is.
Oh, there it is. Oh.
So any corrections could go there. Any entries, just go to a new form.
And that's that email. It's not just for today, like for as long as, I mean, forever, maybe. That potentially this could be the email forever, but at least in the foreseeable future, that's the email.
It is possible that with our new website, we will have an AJL.com address, which would be really nice. So
Awesome.
we have a lot of Gmail addresses out there right now, but we're thinking about, you know, having like jewishlibraries.org be the site. So yeah.
But even if once we do that, we'll be able to forward from the Gmail.
Yeah, exactly.
Toby, go ahead.
Hi, I missed the beginning of this, so I don't know if you already said it, but I'm wondering if I can add like University of Washington, for instance. Like I'm not the librarian there, but they don't have a totally dedicated person. It's like
It's McKenna, isn't it?
What?
Isn't McKenna at Washington?
Yeah, Seattle.
Oh, yeah.
No, it's Mary someone. I have to look up her name.
Oh, okay, fine. Because I'm thinking of McKenna. I can never remember her last name.
And I'm not even sure if she's still there or who the contact person is. But so how are you like going through universities and check Jewish studies programs and sending something out, or should I just add them with very little information? Or
if you know that something exists and they don't have a dedicated librarian, please do. Okay. If they do have a dedicated librarian, I'd recommend just forwarding the form to them in case they have additional information. But
I'll do that.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Toby.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, definitely. You have to think, you guys know your own area much better than anybody else. So us, we are not going to prospectively research on your area. If you happen to know a synagogue library without a librarian and you want to report on it, it is awesome. That's the more discoverability we have, the better.
Neil, would we also be posting or kind of promoting, like adding more of the libraries through Hasafran and everything? In other words, getting people more aware that, you know, there's this form and database that we would like to see more populated.
Yeah, that sounds good. I mean, yeah, I'll post it again. I think we should probably post it with a certain regularity without being cork in the neck. Yes.
Can we also do that, let's say, through social media aside from Hasafran?
That will depend on leadership, and I don't manage the social media of AJL.
For the present, let's hold off on like broader social media. I think ultimately we will. I while we're still in the initial stages, I don't want it to be when these forms are just posted online. Sometimes there's just like robots or spam bots that will just populate lots of stuff. I had that with my DH spreadsheet for a while. So maybe let's wait until like the initial collecting phase is done, and then we'll post it definitely more broadly. Thank you.
Can I ask one other? Oh, actually, from Julie Cohen, she has a thing here. So let me just scroll back up here, and we have a question from Toby. So it says here, Julie says she is not 100% convinced of the more visibility we have, the better. She just guesses there's going to be fears of the unwanted publicity as well.
Right. What I meant is that the more discoverability, not the more visibility. Meaning the more easy we make for people to find the Jewish collections, Jewish books, Jewish archives that we have, the better we're benefiting the community at large. As far as for visibility as a danger, I'm fully aware, coming from a country where things are not so nice as in the US originally. But the library should feel totally free, each library, to decide what information do they want to put in the website. They could decide, for instance, okay, I'm getting an email there, but not the address of my synagogue. I'm pretty sure that the Orthodox synagogue in Barcelona will just not approve of just putting the direction of their school there. So it depends very much on what the libraries want to share. They can share. There's no minimal.
Mhm.
And we should probably say, I mean, given that we just said to Toby to add libraries that are not your own, if there's a library that wants their information taken down for whatever reason, they can also reach out to us and we will obviously respect that.
I'm thinking of two things here, and one is that I have a full-time job at a big academic university, and then my synagogue library that's just volunteer. It's a room with wonderful books that people have donated over the year, and that's as far as we've gone. And, you know, maybe I can give them a few hours a month, but I can't take on more than that. So I don't want to be, you know, I don't want to take on more than I can handle. I don't want to open us up to that right now. And then the other thing is like the really dark stuff, like, you know, like in the Netherlands, they had wonderful, wonderful record keeping that allowed the Nazis to, you know, locate all the Jews in 10 minutes. So, you know, like you can go crazy with fears of what we hope will never happen here.
I wonder if
I'm sorry, I think your fears are legitimate fears, Julie. And I'm wondering if there's a way to put some information out publicly, you know, like say there's a synagogue in this town, but then put some information behind a members only area. And I do not know if that's a possibility. It might be and it might not be, but I hear what you're saying. And it's something we should really think about. I don't disagree, but right now the goal was, as I think has been said repeatedly, to try and have an understanding of how many Jewish collections are out there, so that we can answer some of these questions from people that come to us, because you know, I'm gonna state this tagline: if we're the leading authority on Judaic librarianship, we should know where the Jewish libraries are, right? So I think that's part of the goal, right? We need to know where these libraries are. If somebody doesn't want to put their address or phone number, or that you could even for your library put very limited access or reservation only kind of thing. There's ways to temper it so it's not like, oh, I can walk in anytime I want. No, you can't. So I understand what you're saying, and I agree that we have to be cautious, but I hope not to the extent where we can't get the information we need to know where our communities are.
I think if we should consider, for example, clustering material, let's say by zip code, not address, and let's say provide the link of the institution. So we will not be providing address information, just let's say, as Kathy mentioned, maybe a town or a zip code or something. I mean,
yeah, I mean, I'm thinking we could do it for, like, if there was a way to say have a screen where, you know, you want to find out if there's this collection in your area, then we could use zip codes. But if you're a member library, you could go behind a member guard and see where the exact location is. I don't know if that's possible because, you know, Google Maps doesn't have a paid or a members, non-members thing. But Michelle Sandler is asking a question about, no, this is not just for AJL libraries. This is for all libraries that have a Judaic collection. That's our goal, I think. If I'm misstating, please tell me that, but I think that's our goal.
So just really quickly about whether or not to put the address or not. You know, it's incredibly easy to find an address for a place these days. I mean, unless your website doesn't have the address, or if you don't have, like, even places that don't have websites, they usually have some kind of Google Map entry or something. So I think, I mean, if people feel really strongly about this, then I'm more than happy to take down addresses, but all someone would have to do is go to the website of this collection or library or whatever and get it, or just literally ask Google. So I really understand the worry about making a lot of Jewish related information public and visible and concentrated, because I think we all carry generations of trauma with us. But I also think if we're going to continue to grow as a community, and we want to connect, and we want to encourage scholarship, and we want to encourage collaboration, then we have to create some kind of directory also, and it has to have this information, at least some of it. But again, if folks are uncomfortable sharing any information, I'm more than happy to take it down. And I will also say that if you do work at a small, or you volunteer at a small synagogue library, and you are not sure how to phrase anything about, like, you want to add somewhere in the general description, like, if this is not a library that is open to the public, you have to, like, make an appointment ahead of time or something. You know, the email isn't just for corrections. Like, I'd be more than happy to work with people so that the description about the synagogue or any information that is on the directory matches what your needs are, right? I'm more than happy to be the contact person to make sure that that everybody feels as comfortable as possible with this directory.
Yeah, and I'm just gonna you know, as Toby said, you know, if you put in email for information, then there's a certain level of vetting if you have to contact the person first.
Yeah, if of course, if you're thinking on contributing some private collection or saying my private collection, you by all means need to ask those people first. But yeah. So are there any more questions? The rest of the time is for us to go and introduce data if we are willing to do so, check whatever is there to make sure everything went through. We have no particular agenda. We're here to answer your questions.
Question. Should the discussion be more focused on the structure of the database, i.e. paper material, books, photographs, paintings, rather than the color of maps? I find this discussion so far very disappointing.
What kind of questions would you like to see?
I'd like to know the structure of the database. That's the theme of this discussion. That's the theme of this committee, of which I'm not a part, but to know what to be looking for. It's not important what the exterior niceties look like. You can always add those on after the fact. It's when you have this critical grouping of important people, you have to decide, what is this database going to look like? there's been no discussion of the structure of the database.
All the information that you want, it is on the Google form. All the fields are there. So this information, exactly the information that you see on the Google form
No,
will be
it's
in the
superficial.
database.
No, it's superficial. It's not in any depth at all. I filled this questionnaire out. It's very superficial. It doesn't go into any depth at all. I would find,
What kind of depth exactly are you looking for?
well, Sephardic, for example. Is it Turkish? Is it Romanian? Is it Serbian? Is it Bulgarian? What type of material? Is it written in the native language, Bulgarian, Serbian? Is it written in Ladino? Is it written in Hebrew? Is it written in French? I'd like information like that to know how I'm going to target in. If I don't have that information, then this database is useless for me.
So part of it is just understanding the makeup of the kinds of libraries that we're looking at. So we're looking at an incredibly broad range of materials. So if we dug down in our initial questions at the level that you're asking for, then it would be very difficult for, say, a synagogue library or a school library to even answer the questions. We're trying to balance this. We're trying to have this balance of gathering as much data as can be useful for an initial pass, while also making the form easy to fill out, because we would like people, it's self-selecting. People are going to fill it out if they want to fill it out. And if we present those kinds of questions to a school library that has children's literature on Jewish related children's literature, they're going to take one look at the 75 questions and say, forget it, why should we even bother? So what we're hoping is that people will fill out as detailed information as they can, and then somebody who's interested in more specific information about the various topics can reach out to the individual libraries to find more information.
Yes, I wanted to add to that the purpose of the directory is to put the institution and the collections as much as you can in the map. But that's why we will put the contact information, and we will put the IPAC, the catalog of the institution. We cannot really go in detail describing every single library and their holdings with all the possible facets and subjects. I figure if I had to do this for my own library, the amount of fields will be just overwhelming. This is not within the scope of what we want to do. It's like put the institution and their collection somehow in the map, and then it's up to the researcher to go in and get more specific information on something.
Neil, Toby had a question that's about searchability by subjects. Like this is Toby is referring to the database, right?
Jan, you want to say something about that? Okay.
Sure. So our hope is that, so this will have the map, the Google map, but then we'll also have a parallel searchable list that will be divided by, we have to figure out the specifics of it, but it will hopefully be divided by different subjects or various different categories, maybe by languages. But for now, all we have is the map. We're still figuring out the kinks of a searchable list.
There's one point that David brought up. I think some libraries, it would be very hard to go to that granular level of breaking down, let's say, the examples of different types of Sephardic regions or languages or so on. I think that sometimes that's going, I know that as a subject cataloger, you can only do so much before, we're not indexing, we're just creating something that can provide access to. And I think going too far, if people are interested, can always find a book and look for themselves. But I think our goal is just to have a way of this, okay, these libraries exist, and let the researcher or individuals go finding.
Right, the goal has, in my understanding, the goal has always been to have a directory of all the Judaic collections in the world, basically, but at least in the country, in the United States, but hopefully, as I say, internationally, since we have an international membership. it is my understanding, again, and I'm sure there are many people who can correct me if I'm wrong. My understanding is that it's never been about like detailed data or information about each and every library, but rather, if I live in Seal Beach, California, where's my closest Jewish library, right? That's really what it's been about. So I don't know that we are capable, or nor can we do what David is asking. And I'm sorry for that, but that's just sort of the nature of the beast when we're talking about so many institutions. And as Michelle said, so many different sizes and structures and all of that. I think it behooves the person who's doing the research to say, oh, look, I have a library here in my backyard. I'm going to find out if they have the kind of information I'm looking for my research. Julie.
Julie?
What are some of the what are some of the attributes or advantages that we're looking for from the map feature to the directory, as opposed to a spreadsheet or a database or a list? Like, why not say I want to put in my zip code and find out what libraries are within 100 miles? What, you know, like what do we gain from having a usable, accessible map?
I think there is both and both. So we intend to have a searchable database when we finally go live with it, but the map visualization as a tool for visualization. Nowadays, you can see everywhere, it's not only us, that if you have a bunch of data, it may be great, it may be searchable or whatever, but it's not intuitive for people to access. When you are not using the data to tell a story, the data kind of loses part of the purpose. Think, for instance, you are say you are Italian and you are going to visit the US and you want to find, oh, now that I'm in the US, what are the areas with bigger concentration of Jewish libraries? If you see it in a map, you see it right away. If you have to go to a database, set a query and then count results and all that stuff is much less intuitive. So anytime personally, anytime that I can use my data in a way that is visual and that people say, oh, that's what you mean, it's a big proportion. It's things like that. It's helping the understanding, the visual understanding of people, and then facilitating that people go more in depth and do their own research on details.
And are there stories that we're trying to tell other than this is where collections of Jewish, you know, are?
Julie, I don't understand your question. Maybe somebody else does, but what do you mean by that?
I meant, like, say, if we go with story map software,
Mhm.
isn't the idea that we're using maps to tell stories? So what are the stories that we're trying to communicate?
I think the way that I see it is that each of us, depending on the research that we do or our field, can see different stories. Let's say if there is one map with the same information, I would see different stories and you might see different stories and another person will definitely see different stories. And I think that's a good starting point to, as Neil said, to see the data and understand what kind of story it tells for you.
But also,
Yeah.
I mean, we call it stories, but some of it is just very practical. You know, I want to see where there's, you know, a Mexican restaurant near me. I want to see where there's a synagogue library near me. You know, so That's just like at the very most simplistic, most practical level. And again, this was literally an email that came to me on Friday of like, are there any Jewish kids libraries near me? And I referred them to Kathy because Kathy knows much more about this than I do. And she's like, of course, contact this person, you know. And so instead of me getting an email referring it to somebody in SSCPL, I could just say, well, actually take a look at our map and see what's near you. So some of it is just very practical. You know, we're librarians, we get questions and we want to be able to provide information. And one would think that, as Kathy said, as the leading authority in Judaic librarianship, we should be able to provide this kind of information. You know, so we do that through our members only directory, but we'd like to make this a lot easier for the people who are coming to us as well.
But again, Julie, to respond to you, I don't know, in a way, I'm always like, I would like to see, I know there's a large congregation in Dallas, Texas, I think, that has an archive, that has archives, right? And I know that there are other communities in Texas, and that fascinates me. Like, how many Jews are there in Texas? Well, apparently there are a lot. And how did they get there? And why are they there? And so I think that seeing it on a map, being a visual person myself, seeing it on a map might say to me, wow, maybe there's a book here, maybe there's a story here that I would like to tell or do some research about. So to answer your question, I think that the map could generate its own stories for people in the way they visualize, in the way they see it, what they see visually. So that's just, you know, another brief answer to your question.
Yeah, Neil, this is a question regarding, so we have your intention to go live by the end of June, beginning of July. And I take it there will be the link already probably put into the new website. Well, if other libraries wanted to use that link into their own website, that could be done too, right? I mean, that won't have to be an issue.
I think Yam said that it was in both of these things were embeddable. Is that correct?
You missed it. Oh, okay, I missed that part. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, these are links that are easily embeddable anywhere. Whether or not a certain synagogue wanted to add that link to their website or something, that's up for leadership.
Yeah, my preference would be that they link to the jewishlibraries.org site.
Right.
Then, you know, this is a resource for you. There are many resources on this site for you.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Michelle Sandler, did you have a question? I saw you put your name in chat. I wasn't sure. Okay, sorry.
Okay.
So we're at the 3 o'clock hour.
Yeah.
Neil, should we continue or?
It's totally up to you guys. I don't have any particular plans immediately. I don't mind staying for a little while. Or in any case, thank you everybody for coming. If you think that you've got enough of this,
I do want to remind you that we have another AJL Presents tomorrow afternoon, 9 a.m. Pacific, 12 noon Eastern time, about the Book of V. It's our Purim event.
Right. I'll put the link again in this.
Yes, thank you, Chaim. You need to register if you're a member. I think it's open to everybody. So
it is, yeah.
So you can, so anybody can join us. We have the author of the Book of V coming. Rachel Kamen is going to have a book discussion, and then the author is going to join us for the last 15 minutes. So I welcome you.
Okay, here is the link. And it's tomorrow. Let me put up the actual notice as well.
Thank you, Chaim.
All right, I had to hop off, but thank you so much, Yam and Neil, and Amalia and the whole group for all your hard work. This is really wonderful to see. Thank you.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye,
Thank
Michelle.
you very much.
Bye, everyone.
Very much.
So the time is tomorrow Central Time. Just keep in mind that's the 11 o'clock Central Standard Time. So just adjust your clocks accordingly.
Thank you, Yam.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you so much, Yam. Pleasure meeting you.
Thank you, Neil.
And Neil, thank you for all your hard work.
Hatzmeach Baluparim.
Yes, thank you. I hope I see you tomorrow morning, Alba.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Neil, I have the spreadsheet up. Can I go through that real quick and see if I have to take out something or not? Or
are you asking me? Or are you asking
Neil and Yam? Actually.
Oh, okay. So I'm off. Thank you so much. This was
Ciao,
great. I
guys.
really appreciate all the hard work that you're doing.
Bye,
So thank you.
Alba.
Thank you.
Bye, Neil.
Bye.
In the country
everybody.
from
Thank
which
you.
you come,
I know.
you know, god damn, but this place is crazy as crazy
Oh,
can get.
yes, it is.
Oh, yes.
That's why I came out like that.
Yeah. I'm still here in the trenches digging my way out. Okay, so have a good time. I enjoyed it.
Thank
See you
you.
later, guys.
Bye-bye.
Okay, so I have the website, I have the spreadsheet up. So when I filled it, I put in my own name and I put
Okay.
in my own email. I'm at the Library of Congress, so let me put that back.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so yeah, you said you were from LA originally. What neighborhood? What part of LA? Because I'm from LA. I'm an Angelino.
Oh, cool.
I've always been partial for Angelinos.
Sure. So I grew up in like the valley,
Where?
Winnetka, Canoga Park.
Oh,
I
really?
went to
Okay,
Taft
in
High
that direction.
School.
All right, my dad's now in the Sherman Oaks area. I grew up in West
Oh.
Hollywood.
Oh, cool. I love
Yeah.
West Hollywood.
So I grew up right in the Russian part of West Hollywood, the Plummer Park neighborhood. A family-friendly place, but it had a lot of adult vices to it. There was that part of West Hollywood. Very
Well,
colorful.
Hollywood.
Colorful during Halloween, especially, and St. Patrick's Day. But but you know, it's for a city that's 1.9 square miles. It had 40,000 people in it. That's how big West Hollywood was. It was amazing. Anyway, so that's LA is always like a big draw for me. So.
Oh yeah. No, I get it.
So all right. So what information? So I have here. So I'm at the Library of Congress. Okay. So I put down my own position, my own name, and everything. Does that necessarily mean my contact information? I'm the contact person, or?
Well, so if you put your contact information in,
Right.
that's what's going to appear. Like, are you in charge of this?
Okay, so that's a big question. All right, so
Or we could add multiple people.
I think it depends on the question and how things work, because we are, I don't know, Neil, I think it might be the same thing at University of Maryland, but we are divided into cataloging and reference. I mean, there's two different distinct divisions, and it's a turf warfare. You know, we shouldn't be answering reference questions when it should be catalogers should not be answering that. So maybe, can I leave that blank for now?
Sure. And then do you want to get back to me?
Yeah, that might be safer because we're having issues. So in my section.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, every library has its things. We at Maryland, we have kind of a general ticket email address, and either persons or algorithms trying to set things to the different departments.
That might be an idea. That might be a better approach. And maybe if I'll email the better like general how do you call it? Like the general ask a librarian type email.
Right.
That's like, and this way it could be sifted to whatever direction it should go to.
Right.
Okay.
That's actually what I was going to suggest. If you have a general email address for the department or the library or however it's divided, that would probably be best, just so nobody gets their toes stepped on and there's no like.
Okay, I'll have to email that because there is one specifically. There is a general way of doing it, or there's a link to that, at the librarian, to the Library of Congress itself.
Okay, yeah. I mean, if you just want to email me, or like the email that
Neil provided. Yeah, I have that.
Okay, yeah. So whenever you get a chance, just email to me. I mean, I really like the idea of double checking with people before this all goes live. So just in case you forget or I miss the email or whatever, there's going to be a system in place to make sure that everything is just right.
Okay. That's good. I'll do that. I'll just make sure because I'm going it through now. And so I'd rather not cause and ruffle anybody's feathers, as they say. Okay, thank you very much. This was a great presentation. I'm looking forward to going live. I was just surprised about StoryMap because I'm learning to use StoryMap for myself, but I see it as a narrative form of presentation. I didn't think of it as a database. That's where my question was coming from.
Yeah.
Google Maps seems to be a better approach overall, but it's a lot more linkable.
Yeah, I think so too. It's really tempting, I think, to get caught up in how pretty StoryMap is.
It is,
and the idea of like, oh, all these Jewish collections are just part of one big story, but like that doesn't make sense for practical purposes.
This is great.
Right. And if you start adding people, I don't know, from Israel or something, then it will be just like never ending people going up.
I know.
and down. Yeah.
Every yeshiva has its own data library itself, and it might go too far.
Yeah.
Well,
Exactly.
thank you so much. This is going to be
Thank
great.
you.
And Neil, we have our meeting in 2 weeks, I think, right?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, I need to talk to Aaron about Marlene's questions, though. I haven't. We've been so busy. We don't really see each other anymore.
No, I put you guys in the agenda just in case. Marlene asked me if this will be ready for the meeting. It's like, I don't know, I'll ask him, but if not, we will just do it at the council.
Right, it's not an easy thing. There's a lot of questions she's asked us also about the idea of Jerusalem connected to Israel. That's a big question. And I have a short answer for that. The answer is no right now, but it's a complicated issue. Not so much at the library, but logistics of cleanup is the big issue. Big frame, so on. But so, yeah. And yeah, you just started library school?
Yeah, I'm in my second semester.
Nice, nice. And you have any focus specifically?
I'm really interested in academic librarianship and digital stewardship, but I'm taking a linked data class this semester, and I really like it way more than my reference class. So I feel like I'm like, oh, this is so cool. I want to learn JSON and all this. So I don't.
And the Sparkle and all that. And
yeah, it's so cool.
Yeah, I did that. I took all that. I learned semantic web. But the thing is, it doesn't come into play until you really use BibFrame. All that information comes very much. That's where, if you as a cataloger, that's where it happens a lot. Right. Or Wikidata or anything to do with the wiki world, right, where it comes in.
Yeah. Welcome to the dark side.
Yes. I've not done any BibFrame testing whatsoever. So like but I'm still a Mark person. I like Mark. I'm a very big fan of Mark. I still use the old card catalog, believe it or not. I have to consult it every now and then. So, but linked data it's impressive though. It creates a three-dimensional use of information as opposed to a two-dimensional approach.
Yeah.
And linked data is fascinating. And the whole semantic web is wow. It's a lot to learn there.
Yeah. I think that's one of the things that's most exciting because I mean, I love the idea of helping people with their research, which is what got me into librarianship in the first place.
I was a reference person at the beginning too.
Yeah, because
take cataloging. Take at least one course in cataloging. You'll become very marketable. I do recommend it. Because there aren't many good catalogers out there, and we need more good catalogers.
Cool, thank you for that. Because my advisor actually told me, he was like, well, if you're gonna stick with academic librarianship, you don't have to worry about cataloging. And I was like, that sounds really weird to me, but I mean, what do I know? Like, I'm just, this was like months ago, but I feel like now I'm like, I have to take a cataloging class. Like, I feel like.
I recommend it very much. If you take a cataloging class and stick with Mark in the beginning, then you have your linked data and everything. You'll have the BibFrame aspect or foundation anyways. I really recommend that. And as a cataloger, yes, it's technical, but there's a lot of vocabulary that you learn. You learn how to think as a cataloger, taking a cataloging class. That is a lot. Many reference libraries, not to put down reference librarians, but they don't understand. It's like, I tell you, at where I am, many reference librarians see catalogers as clerical work. And that really fires me up. So anyway, but if you learn cataloging, you'll be a better reference librarian if you know cataloging.
That's what I was thinking too, because when I was in Israel, I worked for this outsourcing company and I actually wrote abstracts for EBSCO. For articles because they were part of that digitizing process and they outsourced it to India and they're like, oh, they're not doing a very good job. Let's tap into all the Anglos that live in Jerusalem. So I was one of those Anglos. And then we got really into subject headings and we use Library of Congress subject headings. And that was so cool. And like talking to people who like in my reference class, like they don't, like, because that's just in my head because I worked in it.
Right, exactly, yeah.
And I feel like talking to other people in my reference class, like they don't understand the importance of that. I'm like, what is this? Like,
you know what you should do? What really I started doing, so I apologize if I'm excited about learning all this. So I started attending what's called the policy decision-making meetings. This is the decision-making in terms of what subject headings get accepted or not, approved, or classification. And you learn a lot by attending these meetings of why one, let me give you a great example. There was a subject heading that was back in July. I think it was July. Anyways, it was maybe half a year ago, on a book that was published about, it was in a year, called Toxic Masculinity. Big subject, huge, very important subject. And it became, somebody proposed a subject heading called Toxic Masculinity.
Wow.
It seemed to be very, very important. I attended a meeting, and although I'm not the actual person who approves or disapproves or something like that, rejects, but I was given a chance to voice my thoughts. And I said, no, it should not be approved. Not because anti-tax, because masculinity is a spectrum. You have, and it's all subjective. You have, and because of that, it's continuum. It's just the book will cover masculinity regardless which way it goes. So understanding that book, it will be still classified, or I think it will be classified in one area. That the idea that it's to go to that granular level is not necessary. It's going to still cover the subject area. And there's always, as Neil said, there's a dark side, there's a positive and negative to every subject matter. A book on the Holocaust, good or bad, will, except that would become an exception. There's Holocaust denialism. But that's an exception than the rule. But there's everything, so understanding that makes subject cataloging so much easier. And if you become a subject specialist, you're still doing intellectual activity, even more so than a lot of reference people. Anyway, those are my thoughts.
No, I'm actually so glad that you said that, because in my reference class, I was like, this is so boring. Like the variety of questions you get asked does not match.
The bathroom, right? Yeah.
Well, but like it also, even if they're related to actually digging up answers and helping people find stuff, that does not match like the emotional
Thank you,
toll.
Neil.
Oh, bye.
Yeah.
It doesn't match the emotional toll, I feel like, that you have to put in to provide customer service for 8 hours a day or whatever. Like that doesn't make sense.
No.
And I think that and it feels boring. And I'm so glad you said that, because that's been something that's in my head.
Right.
Because I think that the questions surrounding subject headings, for example, we read this one really good article.
So, actually, if I take that your email, I could send you some great books. Arlene Taylor.
Oh, yes. Okay, I'm writing it down.
Arlene Taylor, she's written quite a number of books and articles too. I can't think of any off the top of my head, but she had two articles that were like almost like a longitudinal study. Subject headings versus keyword searching. Why do you need subject headings? But the thing is, keyword searching will give you false hits.
Yeah.
Subject heading will zoom in on the book itself, which is what you want to do. I mean, there's this whole idea of precision, how precise you want to get to the book versus discoverability and walking down. You don't get granted, you won't be able to walk across the shelves, but you're getting to look what you're looking for. Well, false hits is not what you want. You get, you do a search on Google, you get 1 billion hits, but none of them, maybe the first 2 pages will be what you're looking for. Yeah, no, but subject cataloging is important. It gets forgotten that it is the catalogers who make things happen. And you get to work with the individual book, and first edition versus second edition are different books. And that, yes, they may contain similar information, but there is a difference why one is called the second edition. And just knowing that, and yes, cataloging might seem mechanical sometimes, but the positive side of it is you get to work in it fast. Like if I don't know if you enjoy, let's say, poetry. I do a lot of poetry. It's nice to read some of them. You are the first person to look at the book as opposed to the reference person. You get to have a feel for a collection in a way that the reference person is just looking for information. You actually have the physical object in your hand. And if you go beyond mere cataloging, if you go into rare book cataloging, the rare book school, that is, you get to, if you take a cataloging course, reference will always happen, but not everybody becomes a cataloger.
Right. Yeah, that's how, because I mean, I think that makes a lot of sense, because I think cataloging, you have to, it seems like a real labor of love too, because from what I understand, not only are you going through all of you're constantly updating and changing and going through that, and having to justify the budget and all those
Right.
complicated things, but also the subject headings
Yeah.
themselves are changing, and you have to make sure your system is updated, because
Mhm.
one of the things that blew my mind was in one of my classes, we talked about how the catalog, I think it was a fellow student who mentioned that her cataloging system in her library is so bad that they actually go by keyword and not by subject heading because their whole system is not cataloged properly. And I was like,
Wow.
whoa, that's wild. But like, what an incredible like labor of love it would be to repair that.
Right, right, exactly,
To update the systems and stuff. And
Mhm.
I also read this incredible article about the libraries in the Navajo Nation and how they create, like they use the Library of Congress catalogs
Right.
or subject headings and stuff, but they actually modify them
Mhm.
because they have a Western bias.
Correct. They do,
and-
and that's a big thing. And that gets addressed quite a bit in the meeting sometimes. It is not just a Western bias, but it is male Anglo-Saxon, even more
Yep.
so. It's very much, and we are aware of it. And I remember it was I forgot what the subject heading, but let's say, for example, women athletes, which is an actual, so you have athletes and women athletes. I said, why can't there be a male athlete or men, or right? And so there definitely can be a man athlete. In other words, athletes is general, so you have a book about all athletes across the board, and you have women, and then you have men. So it has to be proposed, and there's a whole procedure of proposing. It's not just so, but people just don't stop to think about that. And but if you become a cataloger and you can, let's say, improve a particular subject area or improve a particular classification, that's huge. I mean, Judaica is very well defined. We have our BM, and a Bible is BS, which is the Judaica part is very fleshed out because we have a whole team working on there. But areas that don't have that, become stuck sometimes, and then you try to fit in things. It's not easy. I have to get going in a few minutes, but let me give you my email address.
Oh, yes, please.
Feel free to contact me anytime. This is my work address. It's HGOT, so T like Tom, so it's at loc.gov.
Okay, great.
Ask me anytime questions. If you want to Zoom meet or however, just to feel free. If you have, I cannot answer questions regarding LinkedIn because it's been about 7 years since I've done anything like that. But in terms of cataloging, I'm more than happy just to, even if you just want to talk and vent, I'd be happy to help.
Oh, thank you so much. I really
You're very
appreciate it.
Do you still have family in LA?
I do. My mom and one of my brothers, they live in LA.
In Hillsborough Park area?
My mom lives in Winnetka, like by the Northridge Mall, and my brother lives like in Tarzana, where all the Israeli, not all, but I feel like there's like a nice big hub of Israelis. But my fiance is also from LA, and his parents are in Calabasas. So.
Oh, okay, so still up near the Ventura area.
Yeah.
I remember, so my wife and I, when we got married, so I grew up in West Hollywood.
Right.
And that's where I was. When I got married, came back to LA, and we lived in Pico Robertson.
Cool.
And we lived I always felt like the heart of Pico Robertson. I mean, that's where we were. And then my dad and mom moved. They were renting an apartment in West Hollywood, which was a 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom, but for about just under $600 a month rent, which you can't get.
Yeah.
And but they bought a house. Actually, it's really, I think it's Valley Village officially, but but that part of Sherman Oaks going towards. So you have actually maybe it is Valley Village. It's Burbank. Yeah, I think maybe. Anyways, it's that part of it of the valley, and they bought this nice big house. But it was like when the market was just down, because at the beginning of the recession.
Oh.
Yeah, so they lucked out, and my mom passed away now a couple of years ago. But
I'm sorry.
So thank you. So that's where I go. My sister lives out off of La Brea in Washington, that area near not far from Culver City.
Nice.
So I do this Laurel Canyon Drive.
Yeah.
That's my favorite street to drive on. Yeah. So it's been 2 years since I was last in LA, so I'm hoping to go back soon. I was supposed to go back a year ago in March, and then I couldn't make it.
Yeah.
But it's been hard not to go.
Yeah, we were in LA in January because my fiance's brother got married in their
Oh.
parents' backyard. So it was like a very, very small, mostly
Right. Yeah.
Zoom
That's great.
wedding
You can do
thing.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, so we were there, but we were there just for the weekend. So we like went to our favorite coffee shop and our favorite like cafe. And
What's your favorite coffee shop?
we really like Groundwork Coffee. Do you know about Groundwork? They do
No.
like fair trade, single origin
Oh, nice.
coffee. And my favorite place in all of LA is Follow Your Heart in
Oh, sure.
yeah,
heard that.
I love that place so much. So we went there and we stayed home and that was it. But hopefully we're hoping in the summer to go for a visit to like be with family, but it just depends on the
So
pandemic.
there's a place going towards Pasadena off of Burbank called Porto's. So I go there for coffee. It's not kosher at all, but it's like, but I go there for coffee with my brother. And
Nice.
for me, that's like, it's a small local chain. I know there's one in Southgate, there's another one elsewhere. And it's a huge place, but it's fun to go to. And it's busy like till 11, 12 o'clock at night. That's one thing I have to say I miss about LA is night driving. It's so vibrant. You know, you don't get, I'm near the Washington, DC area. It's the city shuts down quite a bit. I like, you know, just going out and about.
Yeah, I mean, you don't get that in Tuscaloosa either. It's like, because it's a small college town, you know?
Right,
I mean,
exactly,
it's like more urban than other college towns in the state, but it's still compared to LA. I mean, I really like the quiet, but also if you want to go into like downtown where things are happening, it's full of like 21-year-olds. And I'm like, oh, I'm too old for this. Like,
I hear you. Yeah. Wow. So yeah, this has been great. Thank you. And a great presentation. I'm looking forward to it really when it starts rolling out. And oh yeah, feel free to, that's an offer that's open for sure.
Thank you so much.
Hopefully one day, I look forward, if you ever look, when things open up at the Library of Congress, you know, always keep an eye out for catalogers. There's always a need for catalogers.
I will. Thank you so much. And I'll definitely stay in touch.
Yes, indeed. And have a wonderful rest of your Sunday.
Thank you. You too.
You're welcome.
Okay.
You're welcome. Okay. Bye.
Bye.